The wind hit the cabin like a living thing, slamming snow against the logs and whistling through every seam. Elias had heard storms in these mountains for years, but tonight felt heavier, as if the ridge itself was trying to bury his little patch of light. He kept the lamp low. Firewood sat by the stove, hatchet within reach, rifle on the pegs by the door. In a blizzard, anything could stumble out of the dark. A sound cut through the howl. A dull thump, then another, right against the door. Elias froze with his mug halfway to his mouth. The next thud came slower, lower, like something leaning its weight and slipping. He moved to the window beside the door and wiped the frost with his sleeve. A shadow filled the glass, too smooth for a bear. The wind shifted and the snow thinned for a heartbeat, and Elias saw a cat's head, ears pinned back, muzzle white with ice. A cougar, then two smaller shapes below her, trembling in the drift. Kittens. His mind ran through every rule he'd learned. Don't invite a predator inside. Don't get between a mother and her young. But the kittens weren't prowling. They were folding into the snow like they'd already given up. The thuds came again, weaker now. Elias pulled on thick gloves. He set a pot of water closer to the stove and laid a wool blanket on the floor by the fire. Then he slid the rifle off the pegs and rested it across a chair, muzzle down. Not to threaten, to remind himself to stay sharp. He unlatched the door. The wind tried to rip it from his hands. Snow rushed in, stinging his face. The cougar stood one step beyond the threshold, coat crusted with ice, chest heaving. Her eyes caught the stove light and held it, amber and steady, not wild. She didn't lunge. She didn't growl. She swayed, then lowered her head as if even that cost her strength. Elias kept his body angled, giving space. He spoke in the calm voice he used with injured animals. Elias, easy. I'm not coming at you. Her gaze flicked to the blanket, then to the kittens. One was barely upright. The other lay on its side, paws twitching. Elias swallowed. He stepped forward, slow, palms open. The cougar's lips tightened for a second, a warning without sound. Elias stopped. Elias, I see them. I'm going to help them. He reached for the nearest kitten. Its fur felt like wet cloth, cold through his glove. The cougar's head snapped up, and for one sharp moment Elias thought he'd crossed the line. But she didn't strike. Her eyes stayed on his hands, on the kitten, on the fire. He lifted the kitten to his chest and backed into the cabin, keeping his steps measured. The kitten barely breathed. Elias laid it on the blanket near the stove, not too close. He went back out and took the second kitten the same way, faster now, because the wind was stealing time. The cougar followed one step at a time, stopping at the threshold like an animal deciding whether the world inside was a trap. Elias stood aside, heart hammering. Elias, if you want them warm, you come in. If you don't, I can't leave them out there. The cougar stared at the fire, then at Elias. Snow melted down her whiskers. The kittens made a thin sound, more breath than cry. Something shifted in her posture, calculation. Survival. She crossed the threshold. He dragged a chair a little closer to the door, a simple barrier he could move fast. His hands shook as he shut the latch. Not to lock her in, to lock the storm out. He reached for his radio out of habit, thumb hovering over the switch. Static answered him. The storm had taken the signal, same as it took the trail. No neighbors, no rescue team, no quick way to undo a bad decision. The cabin suddenly felt smaller than it ever had. Elias watched her lower herself near the kittens, close enough to guard them, far enough to watch him. Outside, the storm sealed the world shut. Inside, one mistake would be the last. Elias did not sleep that first night. He sat on the edge of the table with his boots still on, jacket zipped to his chin, eyes moving between the fire and the cougar. She lay on her side near the stove, body curved around the kittens. Her tail twitched every time a log cracked. Her head never fully rested. One eye stayed half open, tracking him. At dawn the wind eased. Not silence, just less rage. Elias boiled water and let it cool. He tore clean strips from an old cotton shirt and soaked them, then squeezed the cloth gently into the kitten's mouth, a few drops at a time. The kitten barely reacted. Its body felt light, wrong in his hands. The cougar lifted her head. Elias froze. Elias, I know. I'm not taking them. He backed away and set the cloth down where she could see it. She sniffed the air, then lowered her head again. That became the rhythm of the days. He moved slowly, always sideways, never straight at her. He slept in short stretches on the bench by the wall, waking whenever the fire burned low or a kitten made a thin sound. He kept the door unlatched during daylight, an open choice. She never tried to leave. On the second day, he carried a crate from the small shed outside and lined it with straw, setting it near the stove but not too close. He filled a shallow pan with water and slid it across the floor with his boot. The cougar stood between him and the kittens, shoulders tight. Elias stopped. "Elias, I'll leave it there." He stepped back. Minutes passed. Then she drank. Later, he mixed warm water with a little powdered milk left from an old supply run, thinned until it was almost clear. He dipped the cloth and waited. The kittens stirred. Elias held his breath as the cougar watched him approach. He knelt, keeping his hands low. One kitten latched weakly onto the cloth. The other followed, slower. The cougar did not move. That was the moment everything shifted. By the third day, Elias moved more freely, though never carelessly. He fed the fire. He shoveled snow away from the door. He stepped outside to the shed to check traps and came back fast, every time, heart pounding until he saw her shape by the stove. She followed him with her eyes, always measuring. When the sun broke through the clouds, he opened the stable door beside the cabin and cleared a dry corner with hay, giving her space beyond the main room. She inspected it, then carried one kitten there by the scruff. The second followed. They shared the cabin without sharing trust. On the fourth morning, the storm finally let go. The mountains stood sharp again, trails buried but visible. Elias packed his shovel and rope, planning to clear the path toward the ridge. The cougar watched him from the stable doorway, kittens pressed against her belly. The weather had eased. The danger had not. Morning came clear and sharp. The storm had scraped the sky clean, leaving the mountains hard-edged and quiet, like they were holding their breath. Elias ate, standing by the door. He packed his shovel, rope, and saw. The radio stayed dead. The trail toward the ridge was buried, but if he did not clear at least part of it now, the next snowfall would seal him in for weeks. The cougar watched from the edge of the stable. The kittens were stronger, pressed warm against her belly. She did not follow when Elias stepped outside. The cold bit harder than the night before. Snow crunched under his boots, loud in the silence. Each step sent small slides of powder off the trees. He worked slowly, cutting branches bent low by ice, shoveling a narrow path wide enough for a sled. His breath came heavy, fogging his beard. Sweat cooled fast on his back. Then the sound changed. Not wind, not falling snow. A deep, rolling crack moved through the ground, low and distant, like thunder trapped under stone. Elias looked up. The slope above the trail was shedding its skin. He dropped the shovel and ran. Snow surged downhill in a white wall, faster than thought. A tree snapped and swung into his side, throwing him off his feet. The world turned over once, twice. Cold slammed into his chest. Then everything stopped. Dark. Weight pressed down on him from every angle. Snow packed his mouth, his collar, his ears. His chest would not rise. Elias forced himself still. "Don't thrash." He cleared his lips with slow movements, coughing snow away, pulling one breath in through a gap no wider than his thumb. Each inhale burned. His left leg was pinned. Pain flared sharp and steady. He tested his arm. It moved, barely. The silence after the avalanche was complete. No wind. No birds. Just his own breathing, too loud in his head. Minutes passed. Or hours. Time flattened. He tried to shout. The sound died in the snow. Elias pressed his face toward the gap again, counting breaths to keep panic from stealing air. The cold crept deeper, stiffening his fingers. His thoughts slowed. He pictured the cabin, the fire, the kittens. No one knew he was here. The radio was useless. The trail was gone. If the snow shifted again, the gap would close. Elias rested his forehead against the packed ice and let his eyes shut. This was how it ended, he thought. Quiet, buried, forgotten by the mountain. His breathing grew shallow. And then he waited. The sound was wrong. It cut through the thin calm after the avalanche. Not loud, not sharp, but familiar. A short scrape, then a dull thud, the kind Elias made when he dropped wood by the shed. Shira lifted her head. The kittens stirred against her belly. She nudged them deeper into the hay, then stood. Her ears turned toward the slope. She listened again. Nothing. She moved to the edge of the trees and stopped, reading the air. Snow dust hung low, carrying a scent she knew. Not prey, not threat. Him. Shira circled once. then pushed the kittens into the hollow behind a fallen log where the wind could not reach. She paused there, long enough to be sure they stayed quiet, then turned uphill. The slope was broken and raw. Snow lay in uneven slabs, some packed hard, some loose. She climbed with care at first, then faster as the smell grew stronger. She found the place where the ground had torn open. Shira stepped onto the debris and sank to her chest. Cold bit through her pads. She pulled free and tried again from the side, using her shoulders to press into the snow. Another sound came up through the surface. Faint. Human. She began to dig. Her forelegs moved in short, brutal strokes. Snow filled her nose and mouth. She shook it free and kept going. The surface gave a little, then packed tight again. Her claws scraped ice. Pain flashed along her pads. She did not stop. The snow shifted. A small pocket collapsed, and a breath of warm air rose. Shira thrust her head down and dug harder. Her chest burned. Her paws slipped, then found purchase again. Blood spotted the white where the ice cut her skin. At last the snow broke. A face appeared below the surface, gray with cold, beard stiff with frost. His eyes were closed. Shira shoved snow away from his mouth with her nose. He coughed. Elias sucked air like it was the first breath he had ever taken. He tried to speak. Only a sound came out. Shira backed a step, watching him move. Elias dragged one arm free, then the other. His leg screamed when he shifted it. He froze, breathing fast, then forced himself still. Elias, hey. His voice was thin, but it was there. He cleared snow from his chest with shaking hands. When he looked up, the cougar stood a few paces away, sides heaving, muzzle stained red. For a second, neither of them moved. Then Elias laughed once, short and broken. Elias, you heard me. Shira did not answer. She turned her head uphill, then back toward the trees. The cold pressed in again. Elias knew he could not stay. He pulled himself onto his knees and then to his feet, leaning on the shovel handle half buried nearby. Shira waited until he was standing before she stepped back. They moved down the slope together, slow and careful. Elias stumbled more than once. Each time he stopped, she stopped too. At the edge of the trees, distant voices cut through the quiet. Human voices. Elias lifted his head. He raised one arm. Shira stepped away. By the time the rescuers reached him, the cougar was already gone, her tracks leading back into the timber. As they loaded Elias onto the sled, he twisted to look uphill, searching the line of trees. There was nothing there. He closed his eyes, not knowing if the kittens were still alive, not knowing if he would ever see her again. The hospital room smelled of disinfectant mixed with recycled warm air. Elias lay still on the narrow bed, staring at the white ceiling tiles, listening to sounds that felt too clean, too controlled for someone who had just been buried alive. Machines hummed softly at a steady rhythm. Distant footsteps passed the door. Voices stayed low, professional, careful. A nurse adjusted the blanket over his injured leg, smoothing it with practiced hands. The pain was there, constant and dull, no longer sharp but impossible to forget. "Nurse, you're lucky." Elias did not answer. Luck was not the word he would have chosen. Luck did not claw through snow or bleed into ice. Through the window, the mountains appeared as a pale blue line against the sky. From this distance, they looked calm, almost gentle. He knew better. He stayed 3 days, then 4. Time moved strangely, measured by medication schedules and brief check-ins. On the 7th morning, papers were signed, instructions repeated, and someone helped him into a waiting truck. His gear sat in the back, scuffed and dusted with road salt, exactly as he had left it. The drive back was quiet. Snowbanks lined the road in tall, clean walls cut by plows. The forest slowly closed in as they climbed higher, trees thickening, shadows stretching longer. When the truck finally stopped, the engine shut off, and Elias stood alone again in the cold. The cabin door opened easily. Cold air, stale and familiar, met him inside. The fire was long dead, the hearth dark. The bench stood where it always had. There was no hair on the floor, no tracks in the ash, no sign that 3 other lives had ever shared this small space. He stood there longer than he meant to, letting the silence settle around him. Elias rebuilt the fire slowly, one log at a time. He cleaned the kettle and set it near the heat. He moved through the cabin the way he always had, careful with his leg, careful with his breath, relearning the shape of his own space. At dusk, he stepped outside. The snow near the stable lay smooth and untouched. Wind had erased every mark, every path. He followed the ridge with his eyes, searching without knowing what he hoped to find. Nothing moved. That night, sleep came in broken pieces. He woke before dawn and sat by the door, listening to the cabin settle, to the distant sound of wind through trees. When the sound came, it was distant and brief. A call from high on the ridge. Elias closed his eyes. He knew that voice. Not fear, not challenge. A presence, carried on the cold air, meant only to be heard. He stepped outside and looked up toward the dark line of trees. The sound did not come again. He stood there until the cold reached his bones, until his breath fogged the silence. Elias went back inside and shut the door, not to keep the mountains out, but to keep the moment in. The cabin felt whole, not because anything had stayed, but because something had returned what it owed. Elias poured water into the kettle and set it on the stove. Outside, the mountains watched in silence, unchanged and unmoved. He did not call back. He did not need to. Don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss new stories. And now just click the playlist or the next video on your screen.